Welcome back. We recently have been considering the reasoning for Paul's thankfulness to the Father recorded in Colossians 1. I want to read that portion of Scripture again and then consider the next segment of this. Colossians 1, beginning verse 12. Giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning of the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence. For it pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell, and by him to reconcile all things to himself. By him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of his cross. Yesterday we saw that the person, Jesus Christ, was the encasement, if you would, of the fullness of God on earth. God is a spirit. He is invisible to us unless he manifests himself to us. And he has then manifested himself to us in and through Jesus Christ. Paul then goes on to say, and to call Jesus, quote, the firstborn over all creation. This phrase, which highlights the deity of Christ, has been misused by Jehovah Witnesses and Mormons to seek to undermine what God declares regarding the mysterious triunity of his Godhead, this tri-une nature that God has revealed in his word regarding his very person. They would like for you to believe that the phrase means that Jesus was the first thing created. However, it couldn't be further from the truth when you consider what the words actually mean and then read them in their context. The word firstborn is the Greek word prototokos, which refers literally to either the firstborn child or something that is given preeminence. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 9, we read, that they shall come with weeping, with supplications, and I, that is Yahweh, will lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of water in a straight way in which they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. At first, that might seem to be referring again to one who is born first in succession. That you would read that as understanding that Ephraim was then the one who was born first. However, the book of Genesis, chapter 41, verses 50-52, tells us that is not actually the case. Where we read, and to Joseph there were born two sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. In the name of the second he called Ephraim. For God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. The reference to Ephraim then, as the firstborn in the book of Jeremiah, refers to Ephraim's preeminence in the eyes of God amongst his brethren. In fact, Joseph was the 11th born of Jacob's children. Ephraim was the second born of the 11th born's children. And yet God declares that Ephraim, in his eyes, would be as the firstborn, revealing the preeminence. This concept as well is used regarding David. In Psalm 89, verses 20 to 27, we're going to read verses 20 and 21 and then verse 27, that we read about the same thing referred to David. Yahweh declares, I have found my servant David. With my holy oil I have anointed him, with whom my hand shall be established. Also my arm shall strengthen him. And then in verse 27, also I will make him my firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. Again, David was the seventh born son of Jesse. Yet God states that he would make him the firstborn, and then defines what he means by that by stating that David would be preeminent, if you would, over all the kings of the earth. This term, firstborn, biblically, then refers to a preeminence that is given. We see this then, that Paul uses this term in this manner when he states that Jesus is the firstborn over all creation, and then defines, like Yahweh did in Psalm 89, why he is then this firstborn, or given the preeminence over all creation. Because verse 16 then tells us, for by him all things were created. By him all things were created, that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible, invisible, whether thrones, dominions, principalities, or powers. All things were created through him and for him. This one who we picture as Jesus Christ, this physical being, was God incarnate, the creator of the heavens and the earth. He was before all of creation, meaning he wasn't created. He actually was the creator. That's what Paul's stating, that Jesus Christ is then preeminent over all of creation, not because he was a created being. That term isn't actually used. It would be proto-katasis, but he's not that. He is the preeminence over all of God's creation. I challenge you today, and I encourage you and exhort you to take time today, again, to meditate upon who Jesus is and what he has done for you. He has created us in his image and in his likeness. He has given us a spirit. God is spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. He's given us a spirit in order that we might worship him, that we might know him. And then he came and took upon our flesh in order that we might be restored, reconciled into having fellowship with him. Pray, meditate, exalt the Lord, and have a blessed day.